let's cross over to Los Angeles and speak with Haytham Faraj, who is a lawyer as well as a former U.S. Marine Corps officer. Haytham, it is good to have you on the show. In one of your recent social media posts, you say that Israel is headed for strategic defeat. What exactly do you mean by that?
Israel came out itself and set some objectives, which included stopping the rockets from Gaza, freeing the hostages, destroying Hamas's ability to undertake attacks, capturing or killing Hamas leaders or commanders. And they failed miserably in all of those. They've managed to only kill civilians. Just yesterday, there was another rocket strike that was launched from northern Gaza. And instead of neutralizing Hamas, Hamas seems to be neutralizing Israeli units. The Golani Brigade is now combat ineffective. The paratrooper brigade is now combat ineffective. They're both out of the fight. What you have coming in is under trained, inexperienced reservists. And I think you're going to see Israel continue to suffer heavy losses and ultimately suffer a very strategic defeat in Gaza.
In terms of the timeline of how this conflict is progressing, there's clearly a difference between what the U.S. wants to see and how the Israeli Prime Minister is steering this. In fact, Benjamin Netanyahu had just made a second visit, trip to Gaza. There he said that Israel would continue with the long fight. Do you feel that as this conflict progresses and the gap between what the U.S. wants to see and how Israel would like to see it go, that's going to be causing more problems in terms of the support it's getting from the U.S.?
We're inching that way. We're getting there. But look, you have to go back to before October 7th. The Netanyahu government was not someone that the U.S. was actively engaging with. I mean, President Biden wasn't even speaking with Netanyahu. It was the propaganda about the atrocities or alleged atrocities that came out of the October 7 Hamas operation that caused the U.S. Administration to rally against the Netanyahu government. But look, I was watching the clip just before. Even the Israeli public is turning against this government. It's a government made up of a couple of terrorists and a warmonger in Netanyahu. And as we always do in the U.S., mission creep or political creep, we're going to eventually have to tell Netanyahu enough is enough. And it's going to happen right before we realize that if we don't stop him, he is going to sacrifice Israel for his own benefit.
That is a very delicate balance. As you pointed out, I think the current death toll stats are around 20,500 innocent Gazans, mostly women and children who have been killed as a result of the Israeli onslaught. I want to ask you a question with regards to your experience in Iraq and Hamas and the tunnels. When you look at some of the video that's been released to the media by the Israeli military, they are showing this extensive network of tunnels. But do you feel that perhaps the Israeli military has underestimated this network of Hamas, or do you feel that there's much more to be uncovered?
Well, the success isn't just because of the tunnels. Look, this is a better comparison to Vietnam. In Vietnam, we discovered the tunnels that the Viet Cong had, but we were never able to achieve any strategic victories. And yes, the answer to your question is yes. Israel has underestimated Hamas's ability to fight. They have not been training for this fight while Hamas is prepared. Hamas is fighting for land that it believes it's theirs. They have an ideology that allows them to fight to death for this land, while the Israeli is really not very connected. I mean, the fact that they had to bring in 300,000 reservists from around the world says something about a country made up of 7 million people. Why do you need to bring people from outside to fight for a land that you claim is yours? That doesn't happen anywhere except in a place like Israel. And so the short answer to your question is yes, they've underestimated Hamas. They've underestimated Hezbollah in the past. they've underestimated the will of the Palestinian people in the West Bank to resist. I mean, they live. The Israeli government, uh, you know, lives in a world where if it weren't for the U.S. and U.S. support, they would never survive this.
Mhm. I'm sure you had a chance to listen to the interview that Osama Hamdan gave to us. He said, from their perspective, everything is in place in terms of a truce and a possible prisoner exchange, although there is a lot more way to go in terms of what the Israelis need to do. Obviously, there's a huge amount of pressure on the Israeli prime minister. Even today, when he was speaking in the Knesset, he was heckled by family members of some of the hostages. Do you feel that we are closer to a possible second truce and a second round of exchanges?
I don't know. There's an arrogance in this idea that Hamas and the United States get to tell the Palestinians who their leaders are. We tried it in Vietnam before leaving Vietnam. We tried it in Afghanistan, and the Taliban are right back in power. We seem to be doing the same thing over and over again. We did it. We brought a puppet government in Iraq, and it collapsed. And the Iraqis voted for the government that they actually want. And so until President Biden, gets some meaningful advice or listens to the advice that I'm sure he's getting, not the one that is twisted by the Israeli lobby. Only then will they understand that no one is going to force the Palestinians to accept a government that they don't choose. And once that happens, then uh, you will be able to reach a lasting ceasefire.
Well, you mentioned Iraq and how the U.S. facilitated the implementation of a puppet government there. I think we all know what kind of happened was led to the rise of Daesh or ISIS. Do you think of how Israel is conducting this war, its objectives, that Washington or the Israeli leadership is considering some of the lessons that the U.S. could have learned from Iraq?
We seem to be repeating the same mistakes over and over again. I can tell you this: military leaders who were not influenced by the type of money uh, that is at play in American politics, where essentially we've made it legal to buy seats in Congress. Military leaders have learned the painful lessons from Iraq. It's only when our politicians begin to listen to the military leaders, the uh, the uh, the professionals at the State Department. Only then will we begin to learn and incorporate the painful lessons from Iraq, from Afghanistan, and before that in Vietnam.
Okay. Haytham Faraj, thank you very much for joining us here on TRT World. Do appreciate it.